Alright gunfuckers, here's one that happened a few summers ago. Live out near Texarkana. Parents have farm with a few cows, horses, and too many chickens to count. Farm sits on the boundary between woods and plains. Trees are sparse but thicken up like crazy toward back of property. Parents gone to Corpus Christi for vacation, so of course I have to take care of all the animals. Tack the heat wave passing through onto that, and it's basically constant care making sure they're watered. My favorite dog. Closest friends are out of town for the week. Farm is about 20 miles outside city limits, so I can rule getting my dick wet out of the roster of activities. Split time up between feeding animals and sighting in my new SIG 556 I got for graduation. Wake up one morning, one of our older horses had died. She had plenty of water, but the heat must have just been too much for her, poor girl. I phone Dad, he tells me to go to neighbor Frank a few miles down the road, he has a backhoe. Go to Frank, tell him my situation. He follows me back home with the thing and fills me in on how to operate, not too different from a tractor, so I'm set. Tells me he'll be back the next morning for the backhoe. Set to work digging Empress grave, fill it in, offer a moment of silence, shed a manly tear. Suddenly inspiration. Wave. Turn the backhoe back on and chug-a-lug to the back of the property. 30 plus acres and not a single berm for shooting? Madness. Don't bother telling parents because they wouldn't give a fuck. Start digging a berm, leave the trench forest side. Suddenly smell this dank, shitty odor. Panic and think I hit a sewer line. I'm gonna get it. Gif. Hop down out of cab and search the trench for busted pipe, none to be found. Suddenly feel uneasy, feeling of being watched. Scan tree line and surrounding field. Zip. Chalk it up to dead horse and residual guilt, but still tactically back to backhoe. Glad left it running. Text. Chug-a-lug back to farm, turn it off and head inside. Get up early next morning, make a big country breakfast and go out to feed some motherfucking critters. Go out to do the horses routine, but with one less chunk of hay on the wheelbarrow. Sad face. PNG. Suddenly waft a most unpleasant vapor. That smelly smell from yesterday, mixed with rot. Head out on a hunch to where I buried Empress. Stagger and nearly puke. The grave's been robbed. Her head has been placed, emphasis on placed, upright near a largish hole in the ground. Tongue has been ripped out, eyelids gone, an eye's been popped, her cheeks and neck look chewed on. Maggots crawling around the wounds. Vitreous humor dry and crusty running down one cheek. Seen dead animals and scavenging before, this trumps all in my book. Plus, I loved that horse, so this is disturbing on a number of levels. Hear squealing sound behind me, brick my shorts. It's neighbor Frank. He asks why I look so pale, tell him coyotes dug up the horse. Bullshit. I dug that grave at least 7 feet deep. He nods and leaves with backhoe. I play car shuffle again to get him back to his truck. Get home, carefully tip Empress head back down the grave with a shovel and rebury her. Go into garage, slop some coyote urine around grave to keep the fuckers away. It pays to have a family as into hunting as mine. Fast forward to that afternoon. Head out on four-wheeler with a few targets, my SIG, and my moist nugget. Trashy? Yes. Cheap? Also yes, for a little sight calibration. Go to set up targets, realize I didn't bring anything to actually set them up on. Punch self. Go into trees to grab some sticks. As I approach, get the same feeling as the day before. Go into trees, grab some suitable sticks, and do the nope scoot back to my site. Whittle sticks into stakes, makeshift a few targets into side of berm, get my SIG calibrated to within acceptable parameters and operate on the clean target for a few minutes with the nugget. After a while, realize it's getting dark. Is the beer there any good? Believe it or not, I wasn't really into underage drinking. Decide to take targets and shit down, clean up my brass and head back. Leave no trace. BSA. As I'm taking the targets down, the afternoon breeze shifts and suddenly stank. Hear movement from other side of berm and nearly nope a small but sturdy wall in my pants. Decide not to be a pussy, grab my SIG and climb the berm to have a little peek. See medium-sized black shape huddled down in the trench. Untitled.jpg. Figure it's a black bear cub or something, they're more common than most folks realize, and back away slowly in case mom is nearby. Clumsy hamhand accidentally a shower of dirt onto the cub. It looks up at me. That's no cub.mp4. Let me just say that while I'm not the original badass, creepy or spooky images and shit don't frighten me that easily. Shit, when I was little one of my favorite pets was Delightful, an older Welsh pony with no eyes. Her eye holes were, in fact, sewn over and sunken in. She made one of my friends cry just by looking at him. That being said, this thing was on a completely other level, spectrum, and set of physics from that sweet old pony. Best way I can describe it is comparing it to Pick-related. Jaw was a bit thinner, eyes were beadier and darker, and the nose was more sunken back, but the rest of the details are pretty close. Same drooly mouth, same slack-jawed grin, same snargly-ass teeth. At this point, my brain made an executive order to re-examine my previous decisions. Fuck the targets, fuck the brass, fuck the scouts, fuck not being a pussy, and fuck slow going. I tactically backed to the ATV, spent 0.000001 of a second making sure my guns are stowed securely and gun that shit back to the garage. Once inside with a good 8 acres between me and the fuck beast of Pellucidar, I realize that I have a sworn duty to protect my farm. I already let one of my charges die under my watch. It's time to nut up or shut up. Q_arming_sequence.avi. Grab my dad's tack vest, have to cinch it a little tight, and his Night Owl 5X, load up with 320 round AR-15 mags loaded with 5.56 NATO, slap the third into my SIG and sling my new gun over my shoulder. My nugget takes mags. Oh, I put one in with 5 to spare on my vest and shouldered that bad boy. Fuck me, I even slipped a knife into my boot. There are floodlights strung up about the farm for entertaining or night work, switches are in the garage and balcony. Go for high ground.jpg. I tactically threw the house to the balcony and get ready for war. Not a moment too soon, start hearing squawks and gurgles and I still get the jib lies to this day, laughter coming from the chicken pen. Fuck this. Islam every switch and light up the farmyard like Rockefeller Square on Christmas. There it is, standing in the pen like Pick-related. Its body was shaped like a fucking cush ball, all matte black fur. Arms and legs were thin, but looked powerful and wiry. It was holding one of the hens with its head torn off, and staring straight at me. It was obviously a male of whatever the fuck species it was, and there was fucking blood hanging off its shitty beast cock. I unslung my SIG and mag dumped, not worrying about hitting anything, trying to hit that black cotton ball on stilts. I remember thinking, I hope I blow your shitty cock off, you piece of slime. Yes, the words my brain used were piece of slime. I scored at least 5 or 6 good thwucks, my target being only about 50 yards downrange. It never moved the entire time, puffs of fur flying off of it. Ejected the mag, slapped a new one in, and took aim again. I'll never forget the look it gave me, framed by that green sight. It almost said, "Are you done?" I squeezed off a final shot at its fucking mouth. I hit it. I fucking know I hit it. I remember it almost in slow motion, the puff of fucking saliva and shit as my 5.56 NATO round introduced itself to its face at 3,000 feet/s. The thing started wheezing. Like a rusty gate being swung back and forth, that kind of EEH sound. It dropped the hen and stepped over the chicken fence. I swear to fuck that this thing has either retractable legs, or its body is mostly puffy fur, because when it stepped over the fence, that leg almost disappeared. I wasn't gonna let it run away. Mag dump 2, the redumpening. I didn't score any hits though. Once it was over that fence, it dropped to all fours and scuttled off like some giant spider back to the crack in Satan's couch, all while wheezing that EEH noise. I stayed up all that night, waiting for it to come back. Fed the animals with my SIG over my shoulder, went to sleep, repeated the process until my parents came home. Never saw the chicken fucking shit weasel again. So, /K/, what's your take?
Listen fags, cause I'm gonna drop a real, hard red pill on y'all. You all like gas, so let me call your attention to one gas in the periodic table called xenon. Xenon ain't no ordinary shit. It's a noble gas, so it does not react with anything. And it has 5 stable isotopes, meaning, these fuckers don't decay once produced. Now Mars has excess of xenon 129 with respect to xenon 130. This is curious, because all Xe in a solar system was produced in a supernova which produced the nebula all our shit formed from some 4.5 billion years ago or whatever. And xenon 129 to xenon 130 ratio is the same on all planets except Mars and Earth. Actually, Earth's xenon ratio is in line with the rest of the solar system in air samples from before 1945. After 1945 Earth has xenon 129 excess and will have it until the sun burns it. That's because, if you fission uranium with fast neutrons, like in an exploding bomb, the process produces 10 fucking times xenon 129 than xenon 130. All nuke testing on Earth after 1945 caused a 7.2% increase of xenon 129 compared to pre-nuclear Earth. Now hold your hat, cowboy, because Mars has 271% the amount of xenon 129 compared to pre-nuclear Earth, or 171% increase. So it means that the total yield of nuclear processes on Mars was fucking 21 times the yield of all nukes ever detonated on Earth. Someone nuked the shit out of Mars and that's why the place is a fucking wasteland. Now here's another kicker, NASA had this evidence since Viking 1 measured Xe isotopes back in 1976, and they said nothing. Instead, people who said that PIC-related is artificial got ridiculed, even if any moron can see nature does not make shit like this. Link to spsr.utsi.edu article on evidence for a large anomalous nuclear explosions in Mars past.
Father Alfred Joseph Kuns, April 15, 1931, March 4, 1998, was a Catholic priest who was found with his throat slit in his Roman Catholic Church in Dane, Wisconsin. The still unsolved murder investigation has been described as the most expensive and time-consuming investigation in Dane County's history. Kuns, though he continued to say the Latin Mass, also said the Mass in English and was in communion with his diocesan bishop. Father Kuns was a well-known expert in canon law, so he knew how to walk the lines, Bill Brophy, a spokesman for the Madison, Wisconsin Catholic Diocese, said shortly after his murder. Kuns was pastor at the church for 32 years before his death. Prior to his death, Kuns had his own radio show and had been a close associate of Malachi Martin, an author and exorcist. After Kuns was murdered, Martin alleged that the priest had been killed by Luciferians and said Kuns had performed several exorcisms before his death. Martin said Kuns felt his life was in danger in the weeks before his murder. Kuns's friend, Abbot Ryan St. Anne Scott, felt Kuns's murder was related to Kuns's investigation of sexual abuse scandals in the diocese. The Dane County Sheriff's Department also investigated a calf mutilation 15 miles from Kuns's church the day before his murder that a farmer attributed to a cult. Kuns had allegedly been investigating reports of homosexuality and sexual abuse by priests within the Diocese of Springfield, Illinois. On March 4, 1998, at 7 a.m., the body of Father Alfred J. Kuns, Dob, April 15, 31, was found in the hallway of St. Michael School. The school is in the village of Dane, population approximately 600, located in rural Dane County 5 miles northwest of Madison, Wisconsin, the state capital. Father Kuns was the victim of a homicide. His throat was cut with an edged weapon severing the carotid artery. He died as a result of blood loss. The body was discovered by a teacher arriving at the school and was found lying in the hallway near the door to the father's living quarters in the school. All the doors to the school were locked and there was no sign of forced entry. Father Kuns was a traditional Roman Catholic priest, who had served at St. Michael Church for 32 years. He had strong traditional Orthodox Roman Catholic views that were evidenced by the fact that he conducted Latin Masses as well as English Masses. He was an expert in canon law, the law of the Church, and as such many people nationwide consulted with him. On the night prior to the homicide, Father Kuns participated in the taping of a religious radio talk program, which was to be aired at a later date. After the taping, at 10 p.m., he was dropped off at St. Michael Church/school by another priest. Subsequent to that, at about 10:30 p.m., he had a phone conversation with another priest. Investigators believe the killer is someone that Father Kuns knew and is familiar with the village and St. Michael's. Father Kuns was probably not fearful of the killer. The attack was cowardly, unprovoked, and unexpected. The particular motive is unknown but may be related to jealousy, revenge, betrayal, or any other issue which was personal to the killer. The Reverend Alfred Kuns was laughing the last time Peter Kelly saw him alive. The pair had just finished co-hosting a faith-based radio show in Monroe on the evening of March 3, 1998, that included a guest appearance by their good friend, the Reverend Charles Fiore. As the 67-year-old Kuns was preparing to leave with Fiore, Kelly told Kuns his strict adherence to conservative, traditional Catholic teachings including a vow to live in poverty would make a good story. That prompted Fiore to joke that the story should be titled, From Rags to Rags. Kuns, who grew up on a farm in Fenimore during the Depression, responded with a hearty laugh, according to Kelly. He certainly saw the humor in the teasing, Kelly said. A private investigator from Hoffman Estates, 3, who studied the Kuns murder while doing research on another case involving a priest a few years ago, said during a 2015 interview that the sheriff's office was doing a credible job with its investigation. There's no physical evidence to incriminate a suspect and there are no witnesses, Thomas Hampson said. Hampson, who did intelligence work for the U.S. Air Force and the state of Illinois and now heads an alliance that tracks down child sexual predators, believes detectives know who murdered Kuns but the person they needed to make the case stand up in court was not forthcoming with them. Probably out of self-preservation. And that person is dead, he said. Hampson also had an opinion about the outspoken Kuns, who was a polarizing figure in the church and elsewhere during his 32 years at St. Michael. After debunking every conspiracy theory and wild claim that came forth about Kuns, including that he had affairs with women and was killed by a jealous lover, Hampson said he came to the conclusion that Kuns wasn't anything but a decent guy. Kelly learned that Kuns was murdered via a phone call from Fiore. He recalled that the retired Dominican priest, who died in 2003, started the conversation by saying, "Peter, are you sitting down?" Soon after, Kelly was at St. Michael talking to the teacher who found Kuns's body. Kelly recalls feeling sorry for the teacher who was shivering in the cold air as he explained how he got covered in Kuns's blood while checking to see if he was still alive. "I can still see him sitting in my car with my long, black top coat on trying to get warm," Kelly said. Kelly says he has been thinking about how the past 20 years have flown by for him. He says he still closes his eyes and can see Kuns laughing as he walked out of the Monroe radio station just hours before he was killed. He says he also thinks about the drive he made to St. Michael several hours later and how he stood in the cold air on the morning of March 4, wondering who killed his friend.
About 6 months ago I was in the Sierra Nevada, Golden Trout Wilderness. I wandered off of the trail I was on and hiked up a small ridge. I was at around 10,000 feet, and ancient foxtail pines surrounded me. They were all gnarled and sort of eerie to begin with, and I realized I was surrounded by a small grove of about 6 of them, all arranged in a circle. I think the fact that these trees were all most likely around 800 to 1,400 years old has something to do with what happened next. I took the gum out of my mouth and stuck it onto one of the trees. I was under the impression that one day someone would walk by, see it and think, haha, that's funny, I guess someone else was here. Suddenly I felt terror, pure terror. A massive booming sound started filling the air around me. I couldn't understand what the hell was going on, but I swear I could feel vibration in my body from this sound. It was almost like the trees were angry at me. I was actually carrying a gun in the front pocket of my down vest, but I didn't feel safe. I fucking ran. I ran as fast as I could, and the quicker I ran the quieter the sound got, but probably around halfway down the ridge I could still hear it. It was faint, but still there. This noise didn't fade in, it abruptly erupted out of nowhere. I have never felt fear like that before, but the next time I head out there I'm going back. I don't think you'll find those same trees, but I'll definitely find tons more of them.
I have an uncle who used to live in the Catskills. One time when I visited his house, he asked me if I wanted to see something freaky. I said sure, so we got in his truck, drove way up into the mountains, and pulled into an overgrown path. Right as you pull into it, you can clearly see a burned down foundation of an old house. It had to have been very old though, because it looked completely undisturbed. He shut off his truck, and a few seconds after he did, the radio started to pick up. You could just barely hear the voices of people screaming and crying, with fire burning in the background. It was fucked up.
There are a couple of weird stories my family insists are true. One similar to OP's is that my great-uncle was a witch who could turn into a crow. A more interesting one is that one night when my grandfather was a teenager he was riding home from town. This was rural New Mexico, and his family owned a ranch, so this was normal. Anyway, as he was riding he heard a baby crying. He got off his horse and started searching for it. A little off the trail, in some brush, he found a baby. Worried, he took the baby and headed home. It would be taken care of. As he was riding he started hearing what sounded like a grown man laughing. He looked down and realized it was the baby. It looked at him and smiled, revealing a mouth of full-grown teeth. Screaming, he threw the baby aside and galloped his horse home.
I had awful recurring nightmares when I was about 3. I'm 19 now, but I can still remember them. One of the most notable was one where I was sitting on my bed. I had a loft that was made of wood and a ladder that would go up to the mattress. It would begin with me just sitting up, and everything looked real, like I wasn't even asleep. Then, I would hear this scratching sound coming from the adjacent room, and it would slowly get louder, then stop. After a bit of this going on, there would be a dark shape that would crawl into my room, and up the ladder until it met my face. It was like a fucked up cross between a scorpion and a human, and walked on all fours but the feet were hands. The face was awfully disfigured, and it looked almost like a skull with skin stretched over it, and a really long tongue. I would wake up after that and usually piss the bed because I was so scared. The closest thing I can...
My friend claimed he was being attacked by a demon and seeing crazy lights in the sky. I just assumed he was psycho. Eventually he told me it all started when he was in the public library and tried draining energy from another person. That essentially confirmed his insanity. A month or so later he comes down from the mountains and looks like shit. His girlfriend broke up with him, and he had circular bruises and scratches all over his back. We're sitting on my back porch in 20-degree Fahrenheit weather and there is a lull in the conversation. All of a sudden I feel what I describe as a humanoid presence standing between us. You know the feeling you get when someone is standing right against your back. It felt like it was made out of burning coals. Just an overwhelming heat that was making me nauseous. Eventually I felt it touch me and my stomach physically churned. I turned around and my friend was looking right at me and he said, "That's that thing that's following me." Still no idea what to think of it. He is doing better now, but still has attacks and weird shit happen to people who live with him. His old roommates from the mountains both went totally insane, like 7th floor batshit. Apparently as a child I told my parents I saw some weird ass shit. My dad told me when I was 3 to 4 I told him that, "Do you remember when we were waiting for mommy to come home from them, and the sun went over the roof of our house to bring her back?" He did a double take and asked what I said. I replied, "Yeah, when the sun went over our house and brought mommy back." It's sort of surreal because I don't remember anything, even me saying that. To this day he swears UFOs were involved with our family early on in some way, because as a kid he remembers some weird shit happening, some sort of craft going over him while he and his friends were playing outside, living in a woods, pine barrens before suburbs were spreading in. Roughly 1960s to 70s, and playing outside at night. lights coming down from the craft and chasing them all around. This was the size of Zeppelin and floating silently. To this day he gets a bit emotional about it, and truly believes aliens used humans as experiments.
Be my mom in Indiana about 28 years ago. Wake up in the middle of the night, lights coming in from outside, the window blinds are down but the light is so bright that it's coming in anyway and making it difficult to see. Hear children walking in hallway. See 5-year-old son walking, see ceiling lamp above, somehow know it's going to hit him if he walks under it, grab him, ceiling lamp crashes to the ground, but son okay so NFG. Light outside disappears. Don't know what happens, goes back to sleep. Next night wake up, see light in son's room. Walk in to tell him to go to sleep. Son has his younger sister laying down on piece of cardboard using a lamp as if she's on an operating table. Not sure what's happening, tell him to stop and go back to bed. Nobody likes to talk about it even 28 years later.
Had a dream when I was about 15 where I was in an all-girls orphanage where the adults were very abusive to us, and when you stepped out of line, you disappeared without a word. Well, one girl got in trouble and was taken away, so me and a few others followed them quietly to the attic where we saw a white bathtub in the middle of the room. We were eventually caught and were all lined up with our hands tied, waiting for our turn. The first girl to go was strung up naked, spread eagle, face down above the bathtub. One of the adults took a large dagger and slit open her stomach, and we all watched her scream and bleed into the bathtub. One by one, each girl went up and was slit open. When I got close to the front, I freaked out and started to run. I was then chased after for miles with no end in sight. It's been years and I still remember the imagery of it all. The weirdest thing is the name of this bath thing was never mentioned in the dream, but I know it's called the sun ritual.
I've had a few strange things happen in my life. Nothing absolutely terrifying, but uncanny nonetheless. Most of them happened when I was very young. When I was a baby, my mom told me she would hear me talking to a man through the baby monitor. She'd run up to check and there'd be no one there. What's really creepy is that the house we lived in at the time was supposed to be haunted by an old man. In the same house when I was 3 and couldn't possibly know anything about the solar system, my mom walked in on me spinning in circles. She asked me what I was doing and I said being the rings of Saturn. When I was a bit older we moved to Grand Rapids into an old house. My bedroom used to belong to a kid that died in a car crash. Great. I was 7, but for some reason I don't remember this. According to my mom, she could hear me lie awake talking. She didn't think much of it, and thought I was just talking to myself. Finally one night I ran downstairs to her bedroom, terrified. When my mom asked me what was wrong, I told her that I was scared of the little boy that lived in my closet. My closet always creeped me out because it was old and creaky and led into the attic. I'll try to think of more. For no green text. I'm on my phone, deal with it.